I want to welcome you to the Pro Mindset Podcast. The Pro Mindset Podcast is all about diving into the headspace that results in championship performance. High-performing athletes, winners, have this mental flow and have a positive headspace for their performances and success. Join me, Craig Domann, sports attorney and NFL agent, on this podcast. I will interview pro athletes, college athletes, football coaches, and sports personalities. Together, we can discover how you can get in the flow and have your own pro mindset. Okay, today on Pro Mindset, I want to welcome Sean Callahan. Sean, welcome to the show today.
Yeah, it's great to be on, Craig. Thank you.
Okay, so share with everybody, what is your affiliation? I know you cover Nebraska football, but you have lots of different hats you wear.
Yeah, so I'm kind of my own entity in some respects, but I own HuskerOnline.com, which we're the Rivals.com Nebraska site, and we are one of the largest college football team sites on any of the networks out there, top 5 overall site in the country, and that's my main role. And then I also work with KETV Channel 7, the ABC station here in Omaha. I do all their Husker reports for them 3-4 nights a week. KFAB Radio as well in Omaha, and I'm their Husker reporter, and I go on every day with those guys as well. And then I'm on a weekly television show for, I think, 17 episodes a year. It's called Big Red Wrap-Up. It airs statewide, and many years ago we interviewed Craig Domann on that show as a recruit, and we interview a different recruit every week in our recruiting segment. So that's really the gist. I do a lot of public speaking. I probably do 50 public speeches a year now between lunches, dinners. Then I sell radio reports as well to 10 to 15 different affiliate stations that buy my daily Husker reports. So it's a little bit of everything, and it allows me to kind of have a lot of flexibility and freedom.
Well, you're in the hotbed of college football. Obviously, you're not at Alabama or Clemson or Notre Dame, but Nebraska has got to be one of the top 4 or 5 programs in the nation as far as just coverage, interest, just the boards that are out there. When I look at Rivals, it just seems like not very many schools have as much coverage as Nebraska does. So you're in a good place to be for what you're doing.
Yeah, there's interest in every angle. I mean, when number 2 and number 3 guys on our depth chart transfer, that's front page news in Nebraska. I mean, it's covered like a pro team in a pro market, and there is no pro sports in Nebraska, so it makes it unique. And it's not just football here. Volleyball sells out, as you know, Craig. Men's basketball has been really bad for many years, and they're selling out that arena, and they're one of the top attendance teams in the country for men's basketball. Baseball, they consistently get 4,000 fans a game probably now, and if they're good, they'll get 8,000 easily. So everything in Nebraska has that kind of support, and people support this team. They want to win, obviously, like everybody else. It's been tough the last few years, but the amount of support and interest here, it makes my job pretty easy day to day.
Okay, Sean. So let's jump in today. The day we're recording this episode, Nebraska had 3 young men hit the transfer portal. One was QB1-QB2. Luke McCaffrey, what is your take on that whole situation?
You know, it's tough because it's just the reality of how the game is going, and I feel like the transfer portal has been around since October of 2018. The first transfer portal entry Nebraska had was Greg Bell, the running back. That's when the portal became live, right around that time in October of 2018. And I think we knew it was going to impact the game, but it's even impacted probably more than we thought. And this is a situation, I think, with Luke, very talented athlete, probably runs a legitimate 4.3, 4.4 type 40, wants to be a quarterback, and that's his goal. Got his opportunity for 2 games, won the Penn State game, but then played really poor against Illinois the next week. And, 6 interceptions to 1 touchdown pass. He just didn't put up great numbers, and you got the sense after he lost his job against Illinois, Adrian went 5 games in a row then without throwing a pick. He completed 85% of his passes to close the season out over the final 4 games of the year. That he knew that it was going to probably be tough for him to really realistically win this quarterback job. And I think there's grumblings that, maybe he needs to move positions or do something else. And The minute he took himself out of the Rutgers week, he was going to play the final game of the year, and the week of the game, he pretty much opted himself out with an injury and just said, I don't think it's worth the risk for me to play. It's my understanding it wasn't like a major injury of any kind. So I think that was red flag number one. And then, just the way things went with his brother at Michigan, and then, UNL classes started here Monday, and then he goes in the portal, which ensures the scholarship and granted aid money continue to come in for the semester. So the timing to me was a little interesting, just in the sense that if he was really going to leave, the diplomatic thing might be to do like they'll give your scholarship to another guy that deserves it for the semester versus knowing you're going to leave, taking the money, and then taking that money away from a walk-on player that might have earned that money here would probably be, I think, the beef that a lot of Husker fans have.
Well, a couple of thoughts, Sean. One is that Luke comes in and takes advantage of, in 2019, the 4-game redshirt rule. And then, every player in college football this year has the opportunity, not everybody take advantage of it. So wherever he goes, doesn't he have 4 to play 4?
Yeah, assuming the one-time transfer rule or blanket waiver gets passed, which we assume it's going to. Now, the NCAA tabled it till the spring or summer, but the thought is they're going to have so many waiver requests, like 900 to 1,000 waivers this off season, that they're not going to have the manpower to go through all those waivers. And the same thing with basketball. They'll probably give Luke a blanket waiver to play immediately somewhere. I'm curious, Craig, if he'll be a starting Power 5 quarterback next year. I'm intrigued if that happens. I don't know if he is. I don't know if he's a true starting Power 5 quarterback. I think he's a Power 5 starting athlete. I don't know if he's a Power 5 starting quarterback. And I'll be intrigued if somebody can make him that next year.
It's going to take a special system. He's an outstanding young man. He's an electrifying athlete. The question is, what system best fits his style? Because look at what Illinois did before they came to Lincoln this year. They had their backup quarterback who led them to, I believe they won the previous game, and he was electrifying, but he lost his spot to Brandon when the guys showed up in Lincoln. I think that the biggest question mark for Luke is not how good is Luke, how athletic is Luke. It's what system does he fit in that a head coach could say, hey, I'm going to put my whatever's on the line, and he's going to be our QB1.
Yeah, that Illinois game answered a lot of questions for me because you study Martinez, the 2 best games of his career arguably came against Illinois. He led Nebraska to over 600 yards each game against Lovie Smith's same defense, and supposedly the defense this year was his worst defense he's had over those 3 years. And Luke just didn't have the quick thinking to throw the ball through that cover 2 zone like Adrian was doing. And then Adrian comes in that game late, and he marches Nebraska down for a late touchdown. That was kind of, to me, a red flag, like, wow, okay, they probably maybe overreacted to the Northwestern performance. Maybe we as media and everybody around the program, really overreacted to the fourth quarter play of Luke against Northwestern, that, this is the guy they got to go with. And it makes more sense to me now why Scott struggled and Mario Verduzco struggled so much benching Adrian against Penn State. And then that Penn State game was an anomaly. You get a pick 6 off a terrible throw from Sean Clifford. Not a pick 6. I guess they ran it down to the 5 or whatever it was. Then the scoop and score by Deontay Williams. And then Xavier Betts makes a nice big touchdown run on that flip pass. And then Luke did provide a couple scoring drives on some runs with his legs and that little shovel pass play. But that was a unique game. Penn State, in all reality, probably should have beat Nebraska, but those Clifford mistakes, helped Nebraska win that game to jump up on those guys the way they did. But, yeah, it was a riddle, and I think Frost was really stuck on that decision, and I think we know why, that he knew that Luke had some flaws still in his game.
And let's go global for a second. As a college football coach in Power 5, how do you utilize the transfer portal to your benefit? And it's obvious you go out and find the best guys at positions you need. But how do you protect yourself from your younger talent that's coming down the pipeline from jumping ship too soon, because you may need those guys?
Yeah, it's a tough balancing act, and I think it's going to make coaching changes that much more difficult. You look at Tennessee right now, the number of players that have gone on the portal after the coaching change happened with Jeremy Pruitt. I mean, these kids have put their name in the portal, and they don't even know who Tennessee's going to hire yet. So it's really tough to manage it because you only get the 25 spots per year, and that's really what's holding it back. And I don't envision them raising that 25 limit because then it would just get out of control even more if teams were allowed 40 spots or 35 spots or 30 spots. But that I think you've got to find the right formula. All right, we have 25 a year. We need to hold 5. We need to hold 4 for the portal. We need to hold 3 for the portal. But I think everybody should hold 3 to 5 every year of their 25 for the portal, and then your other 20 to 22 should be used for high school and junior college recruiting.
Okay, so, Sean, let me ask you this. You're in the locker room. You're not even thinking about how many guys you're going to sign from the portal and all that stuff. How do you keep your kids together, your team together, so that you don't lose guys to the portal that you don't want to lose?
I think you got to build the right kind of culture. I mean, I think it's the culture in the locker room with the players and how they feel. And I think you look at places like Wisconsin and Iowa, and I think there's good culture there. I think the players understand the program. They understand their roles. They understand how it works. And I think at Nebraska, there were so many dead spots in recruiting because of transitions and coaching changes and everything that's happened here since 2000 whatever. I mean, you can go back to the Solich area, but Callahan left a pretty good roster for Pelini. But really, post Pelini, I think it's just left so many holes that it causes you to maybe be a little bit more aggressive with your portfolio and take more chances. And a lot of times those chances have not worked out very well for Nebraska, and it's put them in some tough positions with their roster. And you're maybe telling certain kids things to get them here that are hard to actually deliver when they get here. And then when those kids get here and they realize that, man, it's not a guarantee that I'm going to get 1,000 yards, or it's not a guarantee that I'm going to be a starter, that there's actually guys here that are just as good or better than me, but coach told me, maybe I'll get on the field and play right away. But, yeah, I just think where the program was at has put it in a tough position where you try to take shortcuts, and I think we've learned there are no shortcuts to winning in the Big Ten Conference.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I really, truly believe that you've got to be honest with the players when you're sitting in the living room, and you've got to share with them that it's a meritocracy, and the college football today is played, and the gamesmanship is the same as the NFL. Last guy makes it. If you're not good enough, you're going to get cut. And that's kind of what's happening in college football right now. Some of the guys going in the transfer portal are going there because the coach told them they were never going to be a contributor. At their exit meeting at the end of the season, the player had a combo with his head coach and said something like, hey, what do I got to do to be the dude? And the head coach was honest with him and said, hey, right now you got 3 guys ahead of you, 2 guys ahead of you. They're younger than you, and right now they're doing a great job. So unless a couple guys get hurt, you're probably not going to play. But we'd love to have you contribute on special teams and be a great practice player. Well, then that player has a decision to jump or not. But I think when you set up as best man wins, best man plays, you set it up as a meritocracy, and you tell the players, hey, not only do you have to beat the guy in front of you, you got to beat the guy that we're bringing in to compete against you. And keep it real so that everybody hopefully is getting better, and it creates a situation where you get the best product on the field on Saturdays, because everybody that is playing on Saturdays earned it.
Yeah, it's a difficult balancing act, and I think at Nebraska, because of the attention on the program, the fan passion, there's a passion now with recruiting here, and fans want to see you always recruit really, really high-rated kids too, and win the recruiting rankings battle. Where I think there's other programs in this league that are perfectly fine having the 38th ranked recruiting class because they know what they're doing and they know the formula that they've established. And I think Nebraska is still trying to figure out the right formula, and they may have found it, this year. I think this 2021 recruiting class, there's just a lot of kids coming in now that just feel like they're Nebraska football players that should be here, have the right attitude, the right mindset. They're not coming in expecting things. And I do think Craig, the attrition from last year in the summer, the pandemic played a factor. I mean, these Miami kids got here in January, which I don't know. I think if we've learned anything about early enrollees, it may not be a good idea to bring Miami kids to Lincoln in January. You know those kids can run and they're athletic. Just let them get up here in June and come to Lincoln when the girls are wearing shorts and the scenery's a little bit better than January. You know?
No doubt about it.
And I think they've changed that approach going forward with some of these kids that want an early enrollee, because it's a pain in the. I mean, it's rough in Lincoln in January. I mean, it's not. I mean, we got 14.5 inches of snow yesterday in this town. So yeah, I think finding some. My daughter's coming in. My daughter's toy battery died, as you heard there. Sorry about that.
That's all good. It's all good. Well, let me ask you something, Sean, about that. I have a theory that coaches have a very difficult time allowing players to develop. Not only do they struggle with helping them develop, they struggle with the idea of changing what they think of a player. And so when a young man comes in as an early entry high school kid and participates in spring ball, here's what he's thinking. Hey, I'm going to get started early. I'm going to make a great impression on the coaches. I'm going to get a spring ball under my belt. I'm going to learn the system and give myself a chance to play in the fall. The unintended consequences are you're missing prom. You're not playing spring sports. I know pandemics changed a few things this year, but in a normal year, they're robbed of the time when they get a chance just to have fun. They've got their scholarship locked up and they can just enjoy school and get mentally ready. And then when they come in, I don't care who you are, 98% of the time, they're not ready. And the coaches throw him in anyway, and that's who that guy is. If he's a slow learner, whatever his weakness is, I think it's very difficult for college coaches to allow for the fact that that's going to get better.
And a lot of times that kid's not going to be happy because he's running 2s or 3s, or probably 3s. I mean, it's pretty tough for a new guy to be 2s right away if they don't know the plays even. So, yeah, and sometimes you get the Wandale Robinsons when they get here, like, you know, right away that guy could play. I mean, he was a great athlete. But, you know, I think Thomas Fedoni, this tight end from Council Bluffs, Lewis Central, he's going to play. He's a guy that can do it. But, yeah, you don't get a ton. So you're right. I mean, is it worth it? But I think there's so much I don't want to say it's pressure, but it is pressure for these kids to graduate early and get here early now, because it seems like everyone's doing that now. I mean, it's just kind of the trend. I believe it's 13 or 14 kids that did it this year of the 23 Nebraska signed.
Well, and I think the other idea is college coaches have to go into living rooms and tell the players, you could be a 3-and-out guy, because everybody's dream is to play in the NFL. And there are a few kids that maybe their dream is just to play college football, but for the lion's share of them, even if they grow up a Husker fan and they think that's the apex of their football career, once they start getting to rivals camps and different events, they realize, hey, I want to make it to the pros. And so when the coaches go in there and feed that ego, so to speak, the, hey, man, you could be a 3-and-out guy, expectations are crazy. And that I think that's what's also contributing to the transfer portal. What they expected and what they're doing is a disconnection.
Well, I think just the NFL influence on college football and the draft influence on college football and recruiting has changed college football. There was a time when the powers of college football ran the option and the wishbone. I mean, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and you go down the great 80s and even the 90s. Teams weren't running NFL-style systems in college football, other than USC and Michigan did, and Ohio State. But that was their tradition. That's what they always did at those places. But I think NFL scouts had to actually project and go to Nebraska and say, like, I think these option linemen can play in the NFL still. I think this option running back is still going to be a good running back in the NFL. And I think now it's gotten to the point where you can't, in college football, run a system that's not going to get a kid to the NFL and have much success in recruiting at the highest level, because these kids all want to be groomed to go to the pros in 3 or 4 years.
1,000% agree with that. In fact, I think that's part and parcel why the Oklahomas and the Nebraskas of the world have had to come up with these offenses so they can showcase these skill guys that are 7-on-7 Hall of Famers and say, hey, you can be the guy in our offense. You can be the guy that's spiking the ball in the end zone. You can be the guy the scouts are raving about because we're going to showcase you in our offense.
Yeah, and Scott said this Friday to some reporters, it's too reliant on this quarterback run. I mean, they're running the quarterback 15 to 20 times per game. That is not a winning formula of consistency. That's almost more a desperation that nothing else is working, so we've got to run Adrian Martinez or Luke McCaffrey and play the numbers game and just get yards in these plays because our passing's not working, our tailbacks are hurt. So our best play right now is playing the numbers game and running the quarterback, and they've got to get away from that for this to work. And we saw a couple of times this year, the Purdue game and the Rutgers game, what this thing can look like if it's working. And granted, those weren't great teams, great defenses, but you got a feel for what they can be if it's operating at the right level. And even in the Iowa game, there were moments where, like, man, they're not bad. But, yeah, just those little things continue to creep up and hurt Nebraska, the penalties, the fumbles, and things like that.
Yeah, let's go broad again. Talk about championship culture. You were a fan of Nebraska back in the day when they were winning. When did you come on board? Around 2000? When did you graduate
from college? So my first year in the professional media business was 99.
99. Okay. So that was post-championship era. They still won.
Yeah, they won like Big 12 my first season.
Okay. So what is it, just out of curiosity, what do you see as the difference in the last 5 or 10 years from back then?
I mean, the biggest difference is I think the money of the Big Ten Conference has become the great equalizer. Everybody is loaded with cash now, and they can offer pretty much the same amount of amenities you can at Nebraska. You've got to do more than just have amenities and things for the players. I mean, and I think that's what I've seen with the Big Ten that's been hard for Nebraska because Purdue, Northwestern are getting the same check Nebraska's getting, and they can build the same buildings Nebraska's building for their athletes. So that's really what I've seen the Big Ten has done, where in the Big 12, 2008, 2009, 2010, the last few years of the Big 12, you just kind of knew Nebraska would show up and beat K-State, Missouri at that time. They would beat Kansas. They could beat Iowa State. You didn't really have to worry about those games. And in the Big 10, you have to worry about all the games. I mean, there's just no automatics. And the two that we thought were automatics this year were Illinois and Minnesota, and they lost them both. And they played pretty poorly in both those losses. So, yeah, that's really what I've seen is what this league has done to equalize everybody, where all the coordinators are making $600,000 to $800,000, all the assistants make $300,000 to $500,000, all the head coaches make $4 to $6 million. So that money that the Big Ten offers makes it where everybody has a chance.
Well, if you look at just the last 2 years in the football sport, you see it. Minnesota was a hot team in 19. They disappeared in 20. Northwestern was disappointing in 19. They were the superstars in 20. It's like, Indiana, where were they in 19? And then in 20, they came on. It's very difficult. And look at Michigan. They struggled. And Jim Harbaugh took the biggest haircut I've ever seen a Power 5 coach take and stay and keep his job. Amazing. So who's going to be the team in 2021 that's going to go backwards and which teams are going to go forward? And I think that, if you look at Nebraska, the jury's out. They've got a tough schedule because the Big Ten's tough. And you don't know, being in the sports business my whole life, players like to be comfortable. They want predictable competition. So when they're playing Ohio State, they know what's coming. When they're playing, let's say, I'll pick on a team here, Purdue, they think they know what's coming. But the problem is you don't. They may be a lot better than you thought.
Yeah, and the coaching, when you're paying every coach in this conference over $4 million a year for the most part, there might be one guy that's like 3.8, but everybody makes over 4, and most make over 5. That coach is going to put out a team that can play. I mean, there's just not going to be Darrell Hazel Purdue teams out there, or Danny Hope Purdue teams, or Teams that just have no chance when they step out on the field. Chris Ash at Rutgers, some of these other coaches when they were there, Kyle Flood at Rutgers, you just knew, like, all right, Nebraska doesn't even really have to play, and they're going to win this game. And I just feel like that's not the case in this league on most Saturdays anymore, because of just the commitment everybody's making because of the surplus of cash. I mean, Nebraska's budget, they make so much more money now than they did in the Big 12. Like, when you add up the total dollars coming in, that they have a hard time figuring out how to properly spend all that money. At least they did at one time. Now obviously the pandemic's going to make that a little different going forward, but it was such an influx of cash to places like Nebraska, but everyone was in that same boat, and it's just like Nebraska's gone out and built a new tennis complex, a new gymnastics complex. They refurbished the Devaney Center. They got a basketball arena in the last few years that the teams play in, basketball practice facilities tied in there in the same way the football facility. All these projects they've been able to do, and I think that money has played a big part in that. And everybody in the conference is like that right now.
Well, it used to be what you alluded to was the arms race. We had a facilities race back in the day, and Nebraska and certain programs were always kind of like the front runners in that exercise, where today it's a level playing field. So I interviewed a young man that played at Wisconsin for 5 years, played in the NFL for a handful of years last week. And I just said, hey, man, why don't you do a PSA for why a young man should go to Wisconsin? And the first thing out of his mouth was, it's the people. That's the way you separate yourself in the Big Ten now. It's who you are, what you stand for, how you can pour into your players, how you can develop them, how you can give every single player on a roster, and I know this is hypothetical and theoretical and probably impossible, get everybody in your roster believing that they're contributing to what's going to happen on Saturday if they don't even dress, if they don't even step across the line on the field. It's because of what they're doing to help their teammates get better during the week.
And I think you see that at Wisconsin and Iowa particularly. Ohio State, the good, consistent programs. I think Pat Fitzgerald does a great job at Northwestern because you're right. Everybody's got the nice stuff. I'll use a house analogy. 15, 20 years ago, a lot of people didn't have 3-car garages and in-home movie theaters. Now, the way the home market and things have gone, a lot of people have 3-car garages and a lot of people have in-home theaters. So you got to have more than that. You've got to be different and have more than the amenities, because everybody, just the way we live now, everyone's got, it seems, nicer amenities in general. That you've got to have more than just bells and whistles to kind of finish the job.
Let's talk about that. How does a school like Nebraska, to me, when I look at the Big Ten, I see it in spades at Northwestern. They've got 2 stars, no stars, a few 3 stars, and they're so disciplined. They don't shoot themselves in the foot. They don't do crazy turnovers. They don't have unnecessary penalties, and they're competitive against everybody. And you just know that if you let them hang around, they might get lucky and beat you. And I'm even talking about, Ohio State, anybody in the league, and they don't have the talent.
Yeah, it's a lot of sense, like using a basketball analogy. There's those teams that figure out how to win in March that probably don't have the best players, but they just know how to play basketball, and they know how to turn it on and execute. And that's Northwestern football. They may not have a plethora of pro players, but they just know how to execute week to week. They're notorious signal stealers. They're notorious. Nebraska, Bo Pelini learned that right away in the Big Ten when he got here. He hadn't changed his signals ever as a caller, and Northwestern learned his signals, and they knew exactly what calls were coming, and they tailored their calls to those calls. And Bo, that's probably Bo's fault for not changing his signals back then. And they just know how to find an edge when they don't have an athletic edge. And you give Fitzgerald a lot of credit because they haven't really had frontline pro talent at receiver, running back, or they might have a good running back now, but some of those positions they just haven't had the NFL talent. Now defense, they always have a linebacker, they always have one D lineman. There's a guy that played for the Packers. I don't know if he's still there or not. A couple of years ago, Dean, I forget what his last name was, but they had a really good D lineman that just handled Nebraska one year, and they had a couple this year again. So he just knows how to do it. And he was also a part, Craig, of a team that went to the Rose Bowl at Northwestern, and his team is built very similar to those teams that knew how to win back when Gary Barnett was the coach in the 90s.
Well, let's go to Adrian Martinez. I have personally uber respect for that man and what he's been through, because he had a really good freshman year, talked about as a Heisman future guy. In 2019, he struggled, and part of it looked like he got slower. Could have been the play calling, could have been, the snaps, could be a lot of things. And then in 2020, it was like, hey, we've got a guy that we can play if you don't get it done. And so he had the added pressure of the fans calling for QB2, which is usually the most popular guy on any team, is QB2. And when that happened, as a 21-year-old young man, he handled it like a 40-year-old NFL guy with grace. He didn't pout. He didn't complain. From everything I could see from the outside, he was supporting Luke to help Luke be successful so the team could be successful. So the fact that Luke has now moved on, I think Adrian, this could be the year. But it could be the year because you don't get refined until you're in the fire. He's been in the fire.
People forget Adrian played pretty dang well down the stretch last year, the final 5 games. A lot of it, though, was a race because of Minnesota, that loss. I don't know if I blame that on Adrian, though, just the way the team came out that game. And then the turnovers against Rutgers in the first half. But he didn't throw a pick for 5 straight games. I mean, the fumbles have been an issue. But, yeah, I think the way he conducted himself like a pro on getting benched versus Penn State, then when he got into the game against Illinois, just started slinging around off the bench, that was a good sign. And I think the coaches said, wow, you know what, we may have overreacted, and we're going to go back to this guy. And he's a captain of our team, and he's acting like it. He came out here and showed what he could do. Then he goes out and almost beats Iowa. I mean, if not for a blown protection up front, they might drive down and win the game on that possession. So, yeah, he played well down the stretch. There's no doubt. And you hope that he continues. And, I've talked to some people. When he was benched, he kept a positive attitude, and his response to some guys behind the scenes is like, hey, they're going to need me again. I know it. I just got to be ready for my opportunity, and that's the right attitude to have.
He responded in a textbook manner. It's like companies have crisis management programs. Quarterbacks need the same thing because it's going to hit the fan. And his response was textbook. It was not about me. It's about we. And, he's going to be a better quarterback because of what he went through. So the coaches didn't overreact. They needed to make that move. They needed to see what QB2 could do. He showed what he can do. Now they're back to QB1, and they should be dang glad they got him. So my question is, what are they doing to make sure they keep him? And what are you going to do differently that's going to help him want to buy into what's happening in the future at Nebraska?
Well, I think Scott Frost is going to be more involved in direct quarterback coaching with Mario Verduzco. So I'll be interested to see how that looks and how that goes. But you just got to say to this guy, look, you're our only returning captain of this team. I get it. Everyone else has left you. Dedrick Mills left. Wandell left. Luke left. Cade Warner left. All your other leaders around you, Matt Farniak left. Brendan Hymas left. You're the guy. You've got a lot of talent coming up the ranks in this program on the O-line. You got the number 1 tight end recruit in the nation with veteran tight ends coming in around him. You've got great receivers potentially that if you make these guys better, this team's going to get better. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of material there, and they need Adrian to be kind of the master chef to bring this together. And that's what I would tell him. It's like, look, we got you the running back, Marquise Stepp. We got you Torrey. Hopefully Manning plays. Hopefully Betts takes a huge step. Brown takes a step. All these other receivers and the other tight ends and the O-line. Now we got you all these pieces. Let's see what you can do with it. And we think you're going to be a better quarterback because of it.
I don't think there's any question about it. I saw several times where he dropped back And I know he was going through his progression, but it looked like he was like paralyzed. He didn't see things. There'd be people running wide open that he didn't see. Number 11 is a phenomenal target. He's got, atypical size in terms of just he stands out. I mean, anytime you get in the red zone, I'm putting him on the back line. I don't care what kind of route it is, back of the end zone. I'm throwing it 11 feet in the air. And he's the only one who can get it. And it's like he couldn't see some of those things. And a lot of times when quarterbacks can't see, it's because of what the defense is doing to them. Because every quarterback, if you go back to Tim Couch, you go back to David Carr, guys that were just beat like a drum as rookies in the NFL, it destroyed them. You've got to protect your quarterback so he gets rid of the ball quick, so he doesn't get that happy feet, abusive kind of mentality that quarterbacks take on when they've been sacked too many times.
Yeah, and I think you add that with the fans here, how tough it can be. I mean, just go for kicks and giggles after a loss for Nebraska. Just do a Twitter search for Adrian Martinez's handle and the comments directed towards him. I mean, that stuff you talk about abuse. I mean, that gets to you too. I don't care who you are. Like, that's hard to block out when you're getting attacked directly like that. And that's what's different about today than back in the day. I mean, you could have things go wrong in the 80s and 90s and nobody could really reach you or find you very easily. Now everybody can find you or contact you directly, and that's another element that these kids deal with mentally as a place like Nebraska that, you maybe don't deal with that at Purdue or Northwestern, but you deal with it at Nebraska more so than others because the passion of the fans, it's a good thing, but it can be a bad thing at times too if things turn. And, asking him to do all these things, it's not easy, especially when he goes into a sophomore year on the Vegas odds board, number 3 to win the Heisman Trophy.
Wow. Well, you bring up a great point. How could Nebraska fans be more supportive of their team and not contact the players? Unless you have something positive to say, it's a moratorium on contact with the players. If I was the head coach or I was the AD at the university, I would put it out there that we're not trying to create censorship, not trying to jeopardize or infringe upon your First Amendment rights, but we don't want you reaching out to our guys unless it's positive.
Yeah, I just don't know. That's just not going to happen, unfortunately.
Think about this. You got this guy that's watching the game that's trying to live back in the 90s, and he's already had a 6-pack of beer, and somebody, misses a tackle, drops a pick, drops a touchdown, all the different things that can happen, and he sends a DM to the player. Hey, you dumbass, what were you thinking? Now, is that right? We're not talking about football anymore. We're talking about a young man. I don't care if you play for Nebraska or you play for anybody. Everybody out there is trying to do their best. I've never seen a player go out on the field and I want to fumble the ball on purpose. No, shit happens. The other guys are trying to make it. You got an equal and opposite force, and sometimes you're going against a team that's better than you, so it's not even equal. Okay, things are going to happen. How can we protect these kids? Being a dad and having a son, I've seen some of them myself, and they're not pretty.
I mean, I think all you can do is tell those guys, like, hey, it's not advised to look at Twitter during the season. I mean, you're probably smarter just to take it off your phone because you don't want to, it's not healthy for anybody to see comments with fan emotion involved. This is a reality of what fan emotion is. So there's no easy way to shut that down. You're not going to shut it down. It's not going anywhere. And I deal with it. We have the largest Husker message board community in the world on Husker Online. And some of the comments and things that people even make towards me and direct at us, a lot of times they do it with an anonymous handle. And I'll reach out to a person every once in a while that says something really hateful or mean or spiteful to myself and typically when you let them know who they are and like, oh, I know who you are. You're so-and-so in Lincoln. And they quiet down pretty quick and backpedal pretty quickly. But a lot of times people make these comments thinking that there's no accountability that, is going to happen for saying what they say. But if you actually confront somebody and say, I know who you are, by the way, and it's pretty sad that you make comments like this towards players or whoever, typically those people backpedal very quickly.
Yeah, and I think you solved the problem. The players really need to take their Twitter down during the season. Just take it down and just make it inactive, because you're not going to be able to legislate any kind of behavior from fans because they feel like they have the right, and they do have the right to say whatever they want to say whenever they want to say it. But the thing that you've experienced being in the media and being attacked by fans is it still hurts. It still hits you in the gut.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's not. Go ahead.
I mean, there's people that go at me all the time. I mean, there's message board groups that attack me daily and say just for no reason. But that's just how it is. I mean, it is what it is, and people are just miserable, and they're going to do things like that, and they're going to make emotional comments, and they're going to hide behind their handles and usernames, and that's just the world we live in. I think that's why more kids have turned. TikTok and Instagram are much more popular with the younger generation, where Facebook and Twitter are kind of more older generational tools. And I think Twitter is different in that sense because the comments are much harsher on Twitter, I think, than anything. Where Instagram, sure, you'll get a few harsh ones, but I feel like the Insta stories and the way those platforms operate, they're a little bit more fan-friendly, user-friendly for those kids, where I think Twitter, there's a lot of, anonymous handles and message board type things that can happen on there with the direct contact these people make with the athletes.
Social media is here to stay. I'm not suggesting it should go away. I'm just suggesting that people should exercise a little bit more discretion when they're dealing with an 18, 20, 22-year-old kid who's out there busting his butt. And I don't care who he plays for. I don't care if he plays for the opposition. I don't think it's right, and I think it's sad that people will attack the guys because, one of the things that I know for sure is that college football is hard. College football is portrayed to be glamorous. You see the Trevor Lawrences and you see Alabama celebrating, after the championship game. You see these guys on the ESPN top 10. But for every one of those, there's 500 guys that are dealing with failure, injury, broken relationship with their coaches. They're going through an identity crisis because they thought they were going to do something that they're not doing. They're thinking about transferring, so they spend months contemplating the pros and cons. Do I leave? Do I not? When should I do it? So at the end of the day, college football, behind the scenes, is not what everybody thinks it is.
Well, and the portal has just complicated it because I think if after the next year or two when the studies come out of the careers these kids have that transfer, the schools they transfer from to where they go to, a lot of times it's a major step down. You're going to go from an elite Power 5 to a group of 5, and that, I'm guessing, is, there's some, it's like going shopping at Neiman Marcus than going into Walmart. There's a little bit of a different type of feel in the store, and I think when you go from Nebraska to a Sun Belt team or a MAC program, some of these kids that were from Miami, they left Nebraska to go to a MAC program. Is that really what they wanted to do? I get it. The Fleming kid went to Maryland, but it just interests me. When you put your name in the portal, you really wanted to leave a Power 5 to go into the MAC or the Sun Belt or Conference USA. That's really what you thought was going to help you. So I think we're going to learn more, and hopefully the education and the statistics can be shown to kids every year. I know every one of you guys in this room is going to think about transferring because it's the reality. Everybody does. But here's the stats, just so you can chew on this. This many players left Power 5 programs. They did not, and they ended up going to much smaller programs, and show them the data going forward, the reality of what transferring is versus what these kids think it is.
Well, I think the number one root cause of the transfer portal is I want out. I don't want to deal with my issues. I don't want to deal with the fact that I need to work harder. I got to compete harder. I got to develop a better relationship with my coach. I got to know the playbook better, and I've got to be more patient as I just went out. And unfortunately, that's a systemic issue in our society, in our relationship. That's why divorce is at an all-time high. People just went out, right? Let's not fix it. Let's just get a divorce. It's pretty easy to get one. So what's happening in sports is that guys are getting that opportunity to exercise it. Because back in the day, if you didn't like your coach, you just fought through it. And if you had talent, it was probably one of the best accomplishments you had in your whole life was to fight through that problem and come out on top.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I was not a college level athlete. Let me get that point straight, but I dealt with it as an athlete myself. I mean, as a senior in high school, I was on the varsity basketball team, but before our coach sat us down before the season, and he said, look, Sean, you're going to be on the team, but I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to be in the 8-man rotation, and you're not going to have a main role. And, you know, if we can only suit up 12 guys at districts, you may not be one of the 12. I ended up being one of the 12 for all that stuff, but it was like a fork in the road of my life. Like I could have quit and just said, I want to play. No, this sucks. I'm going to quit. Or I could just fight through it, and I did. And I tell that story when I speak at high schools to kids, like, look, you know, most of you are not going to have the career you think you're going to have. Most of you are not going to go, very few of you are going to go Division I. It's just the reality. But you've got to use this to build you and your work ethic for who you are in life. I told a group of kids this past spring, I said, look, no one's going to remember that you scored 17 points against York or had 3 touchdowns against Seward. But they are going to remember that you were a good person, that you worked hard, you treated people right, and you did things the right way. That's what people remember 20 years from now about you, not maybe what you did one Friday night in a basketball game. And, you know, I think kids got to understand that, even with Nebraska football. Like, no one's going to remember what you did in the Troy game, but they are going to remember how you treated and left this place and left this state. And this state will reward the guys that do it the right way.
No doubt. And I do think that, you know, all these young men that are in college football right now, wonderful opportunity because there's so many guys that will give their left whatever to trade places with them. And nobody promises you, like I've seen the NLIs, National Letter of Intent. They never say in there that it's going to be fair. It doesn't say anywhere in there that you're promised playing time. All it is an opportunity. And then you get to choose what that opportunity is going to look like. And just like life, opportunities don't always turn out the way you were hoping. So it's how do you respond to that? So at the end of the day, college football players have an unbelievable opportunity at a dress rehearsal for life while they're still in college because what they're doing is important to them. They're in the limelight. It is a meritocracy from the standpoint that, you know, I've never seen a team that's lined up with 2 or 3 quarterbacks on one play. There's only one.
They tried it at Nebraska with Luke and Adrian, have them both on the field a few times.
They did that against Ohio State, for sure. But it's like, you know, they didn't both have their hands up, and they weren't, like, lined up in a formation where the center could have snapped at either one of them. But that would be interesting if they would have did that. But the point is, every company's only got one CEO, only got one CFO. And those guys and ladies that make it to that level, nobody rolled out the red carpet unless daddy owned the company. They had to earn it, and they had to deal with adversity. And that's what college football is about. And I think the transfer portal is awesome in certain situations, but I think some players may be abusing it.
Well, and people around those players are abusing it too, just misleading guys that, you know, the old grass is always greener deal. But if you study the numbers, the P5 to P5, Power 5 to Power 5 transfer portal movement is next to none. I mean, it's probably less than 10 to 20% of Power 5 transfers end up at another Power 5.
No, I agree with that. I would say the other thing is, interestingly, there's guys that go from FCS to Power 5 because they didn't get the opportunity out of high school. They capitalized on the opportunity they did have. They dominated. And then they're like, hey, you know what? Instead of just playing it out here and going to the NFL, I'm going to show the NFL I can play at a higher level of competition right now. And they transfer, and they show what they got. They got the Jabril Cox that went from North Dakota State to LSU. That, you see more of that than you see of the guys going from Power 5 to Power 5.
Well, and Nebraska's got two of those guys coming in. Chris Kolarevic, All-American linebacker at Northern Iowa, is coming in as an inside backer, and then Samori Torrey, an All-American receiver out of Montana. So I think Nebraska's wisened up in that sense that, hey, the premier FCS guy is probably a better transfer portal take than Kenabai Noah was from Cal a couple of years ago.
No doubt. A lot of the guys that go into the portal, not all of them, didn't figure it out where they were. So why would you expect them to come in and figure it out when they come to your place?
Yeah, and it will be interesting just to see what this all looks like in a couple of years, just where we're at with the one-time rule, kind of the 25 number. Is that going to get tinkered with? It's going to be next to impossible to be at 85 true scholarship players because of this portal. I mean, you're going to be operating at 75 to 80 more likely than 85, and then a lot of it's actually going to benefit walk-ons. You'll see more walk-ons get rewarded. You'll also see kind of more backdoor transfers where they come in as a walk-on, and then year two they get a scholarship. So you saw that with Nebraska with Connor Colt, Levi Falk. They came in as walk-ons. They'll get a scholarship now next year after the portal year. And I think you'll see creative transfer moves like that where, like, teams will – I think Keem Green, I don't know if this is official, but I think he might be walking on to South Carolina. Then he'll get a scholarship the next year down there because of that 25 cap rule that makes it really difficult to give up all your spots to transfers.
Sean, we've got 2021 coming up in August. Hopefully 2021 is back to normal if we ever know what normal is going to look like again. And we've got 90,000 plus in Memorial Stadium. What is your prediction? What do you think Nebraska's record will be in 2021?
I'll say 7-5.
7-5. Okay. Any upsets? Either way.
I think they can get Iowa maybe in Lincoln. I mean, it's hard to call them upsets you're talking these point spreads are so close. So like they might be a 6-point dog, but yeah, Iowa. I mean, there's just so many swing games for Nebraska. I think there's two games on the schedule right now where you're like, well, they're going to be decisive dogs: Ohio State and Oklahoma. And then there's going to be probably 5 to 6 games will be favored, and then there's going to be probably 4 games where the spread is going to be a toss-up or they're going to be a dog by like 3 to 7 points. So it's going to be tight. There's no doubt. And I hope and pray that fans are in that stadium for the kids, that they get the experience again. And I have a hard time thinking, Craig, we're going to see 90,000 ever again in there for a while. But I think capacity, if it can be between 50 and 75%, I think that's probably a realistic goal of what that stadium is going to look like next year.
Okay. I'm going to give you my prediction. I believe it's going to be predicated upon, in a program that I've watched real closely for the last, 5 years or so, the confidence is not ironclad. The confidence is contingent. It depends. And I think the fans' confidence is that way. I think the players and coaches' confidence is that way. And if they can get off to a successful start of the season and win the games they should, not shoot themselves in the foot, I think they can have a heck of a season. If they don't, I think we're going to see the same movie that we've been seeing, which is
you're going to see that I'm really pissed off feeling about another 5-7 type year, right? Where it's woulda, coulda, shoulda. I mean, where 2018, 19, 20, Nebraska is 12-20 right now under Frost, and you could argue they could probably be 20-12. When you look at the nature of how they've lost some of those games.
Oh, God. I've been to them. Man, they've lost so many close games.
I've been to all of them.
I know you have. Well, Sean, I want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank you for being a guest on Pro Mindset and look forward to future conversations and pray that 2021 is a success for Nebraska football.
Hey, thank you, Craig. And like I said, I hope we're in Ireland in August. At minimum, we better see in Lincoln on May 1 for that spring game.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Pro Mindset. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. You can follow us on our website, promindsetpodcast.com, or on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Pro Mindset Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you the next time.